DaVo here from the Axiom Body Piercing Studio in Des Moines, Iowa. And coming up next, my first installment in a new series called Body Piercing Basics. These videos will be designed for those that are just initially getting into body piercing, either as a professional or as, a client, to kind of give you an inside look and some information that you can help to make educated decisions. This one, we're going to be tackling some vocabulary, starting with healing and aftercare instructions coming up right now. Like any industry or hobby or subculture, piercing has its own kind of vocabulary that is used as a shortcut for those that are in the know, that you can communicate with them quickly instead of repeating long phrases over and over again to describe what you're trying to get at. They can be complicated, they can be confusing, and I hope to kind of define some of the most common terms used, in this case, revolving around healing and aftercare. Healing time is something that everybody seems confused about. Now, healing is something you're going to hear a lot. It's going to take this long to heal, or this is what you should do during the healing time. A lot of people have this misconception that that means that it's going to be sore and tender and bloody and gross and have discharge on it and be throbbing and aching and all these things that we attribute to any type of painful wound. That's not the case. Usually you will have that in that first stage of healing, kind of the acceptance phase, for roughly where your body starts to accept the jewelry but also gets over the trauma of the piercing itself. This can last anywhere, with some people it can last a couple days, other people a couple of weeks. You might see a little bit of bleeding off and on, you might see some heavier discharge, and it's going to be a little bit more tender to the touch and have maybe some other issues. When we're talking about the healing time, it is the period of time it's going to take your body to grow that tunnel of scar tissue around the jewelry and meet in the center so that it's no longer an open wound. During this, it is an open wound, so that's why we have you do aftercare, which is our second term today. Aftercare is usually a group of instructions or habits that we suggest doing during the healing process to ensure that you don't get an infection and that you help your body heal the piercing. Now, this can be broken up into a lot of different things. The first thing would be soaks or compresses. Some people will use saline spray, but we're not going to get into that because I don't really suggest them or like them for that matter. When we're talking about a compress or soak, we are talking about something with warm water and sea salt that's either a cup is submerged over the piercing to allow you to soak it for a period of time, or using compresses, taking a clean paper towel, soaking up that substance, and then laying against the piercing and constantly re-submerging it as it cools so it stays warm. Usually, when I'm talking about aftercare, I will usually suggest this be done twice daily for roughly about 10 minutes until the piercing is healed. So that's what soaks and compresses are. Basic cleaning. Some people do suggest this, some people don't. My feeling on it is that you are not used to having an open wound on your body for, in some cases, up to 6 months to a year. You are probably going to contaminate that piercing at some point, so having a safeguard involved that's going to reduce the amount of microorganisms in the area on a daily basis is a good idea, just to reduce the likelihood of infection. So basic cleaning usually involves cleaning in the shower or under running water with a mild antimicrobial or germicidal soap. Now, what does antimicrobial mean? In germicidal, it means a soap that kills bacteria and other foreign pathogens or microorganisms that live either on the surface of things we touch, other people, and all those things that are not friendly to us. Most common or easy to find, and kind of something you use in a pinch, would be a mild antibacterial liquid soap. However, they have a lot of drawbacks, which we'll get into some other time. The biggest thing is, generally what I suggest is either satin or proven. Cleaning them on a regular basis reduces the amount of bacteria in the area, which reduces the strain on your immune system, which in turn helps you heal without infection. Abuse. Now, when we're talking about abuse during aftercare instructions, what we're talking about is clothing, sleeping, exercises, anything that may cause trauma or abuse to the piercing. This will involve, in some cases, wearing clothing that's loose fitting or avoiding clothing that's tight fitting in the area, or changing clothing altogether. For example, a good example would be navel piercings, where you don't want to wear pants that constantly rub against during the healing process because it will cause issues. Now, that's another case of that would be with sleeping on the piercing. You don't really want to sleep on the piercing because you don't really realize how much you move around in your sleep and how much abuse you have. Maybe you have an exercise that you do on a regular basis or a sport that's going to cause trauma to the piercing. Those things all need to be considered during the healing process and avoided. So that's what abuse is. We talked about healing time already. Another term that's used often is seasoning. Seasoning comes after the healing time, and that's a period of time that your body needs to grow additional tissue on top of that already sealed tunnel to get it to the point where it's semi-permanent, where removing the jewelry for a short length of time may not be an issue, and the piercing's strong enough to see jewelry changed on a regular basis and not have to worry about tearing or causing damage to the piercing. That varies greatly from person to person, in piercing to piercing, not person to piercing. So seasoning can be, in some cases, the equal amount, in some cases of healing time. In other cases, it can be 3-4 times the healing period. And even after that seasoning period is over and you feel like it's gotten to the point where it's permanent, it may not be. Removing the jewelry for any extended period of time may cause issues, including the piercing closing. So when we're talking about seasoning, we're talking about that toughening up or strengthening up period of the piercing. Now we're going to get into some negative things. Migration. Migration is when, for one reason or another, the body shifts or moves the jewelry during the healing process or afterwards. It does not mean that it completely grows out of the body. We're going to get to that next. It just means that it may shift or move. Piercings that are done through very thin tissue with smaller gauges or thinner gauges, we're going to be more likely to do that. A prime example of that would be lip piercing. Sometimes they'll move a little bit more out of the mouth during the healing process. And if you talk to your piercer, they're going to probably tell you that's somewhat normal. In some cases, for one reason or another, how you sleep, how you wear clothing, how you act will cause a piercing to shift into a more comfortable position for them. And that is one of the other reasons that piercings migrate. It could be also pressure on the piercing while sleeping will cause one to migrate one way or the other. The next one's rejection. Now, rejection, unlike migration, which will usually stop at some point, rejection is where your body has the ability to completely push the jewelry out of the piercing. This can be caused by a lot of different issues. First one mainly being is if the piercing was done improper in the first place. The other thing would be jewelry type and size and shape. It could be abuse of the piercing or trauma to the piercing that can cause this. And generally what will happen is it'll slowly start to work its way out. The tissue will get very dry and almost scab-like. And if it ever gets to the point where you can see that tissue or see that metal through the tissue, you definitely are rejecting and need to remove the jewelry. A lot of times what's next asked is, can I re-pierce it? Yes and no. Because that scar tissue is now there and thinner, it may cause you are at an increased risk of migration or rejection. So it's one of those things you really want to discuss with your piercer before you get it done again. Here's one I hear all the time. Keloids. I've got a keloid. Keloids are a form of scarring that is usually happens in people with darker pigment. It's a raised scar, can sometimes look like a bubbling kind of volcanic look to it. It's usually kind of very smooth, very reddish, very, very tight. The thing with keloiding is if you are very fair-skinned and it goes away, it's not a keloid. it's some form of scarring. If you are dark-skinned and you are prone to keloiding, piercing may not be the best option for you. So, when you call up your piercer, don't tell them you have a keloid. Tell them you have an issue with a bump and let them diagnose what it is. If they tell you it's a keloid and it starts to subside, they're probably misdiagnosing it. Scarring. Scarring is a pretty common thing with problems. And now when I talk about problems, keep in mind, I'm talking about a small percentage of the general public. There are just some people that for one reason or another, either trauma or abuse of the piercing or the piercing being done incorrectly, instead of just producing that scar tissue inside the piercing to seal up the wound, it will begin to try to form outward, almost like a volcano, and it can be very difficult and annoying to get rid of. Usually, if you see bumps or any type of problem with a piercing, it's best to go seek medical advice or your piercer immediately. The sooner you get on top of the problem and try to figure out what's causing it, the faster it's going to go away. Another term you're going to possibly hear is piercing pimples. And this is within this last part, by the way, is mostly about negative things and things that most people do not see if the piercing is done correctly and they take care of it. Piercing pimples are kind of a bump that usually forms off to the side of the piercing. It can be very pus-filled, almost like a blister or a blemish. Nobody's quite sure the medical reason for them forming, but they can be very, very frustrating because they'll go away for short periods and then return and go to short periods and return. Just like with scarring, it usually involves figuring out what's causing it, removing what's causing it, and then doing a little bit of extra babying and caring to get it to just kind of migrate back into normal tissue. So, those three things: keloids, scarring, piercing pimples. I think it's very important to tell you that it is very unusual to see those. Some people are more prone to them, but the reality is that they are not a normal part of a healing process and need attention. So go see somebody that knows what they're talking about. Last one I'm going to cover is cross-contamination prevention. This should be self-explanatory, but I'd like to kind of go over that. Cross-contamination prevention is a prevention of taking bacteria, foreign pathogens, microorganisms, or what have you, contaminants, see, okay, we're going, and then transferring them to the open wound that is the piercing. So, for example, making sure that you wash your hands before you handle the jewelry or the piercing area. That is cross-contamination prevention. Not allowing oral contact with the piercing until it's healed. That's cross-contamination prevention. And most good piercers will go through some of those things that you need to avoid. And it's a lot about habits. You have to learn to have that habit of not doing that. As humans, we are drawn to anything that's sore or new. We tend to want to handle it, and we want to touch it and explore it. We're like that since childhood. Fighting that urge and breaking yourself of those habits is something that you have to kind of be diligent about and learn about. So, and a lot of people don't consider things that should be no-brainers as a form of cross-contamination. For example, swimming, or using a spray bottle in your hair, or applying makeup in the area. A lot of these things can cause issues that are very difficult to get rid of, including infections. So study up on your cross-contamination prevention. And if your piercer tells you not to do something, don't do it. It's that simple. So that's it for this episode of Body Piercing Basics. In the next episode, we'll be moving on with more vocabulary, and we'll be going through the names of piercings. So, stay tuned. That should be posted here shortly. Other than that, you guys have a good day, and if you live in Des Moines, I hope to see you for your piercing needs in the future.